always been a healer then. Your nature is healing then. This is where I'm digging. I'm digging into.
Yes, I am a I am a nurturer healer. As a kid, everything was my pet. Anything that crossed my path, I took in. Worms, insects, frogs, turtles, rabbits, anything. My poor mother had such a menagerie, it wasn't even funny.
Welcome, Lenore Myers, Attorney Lenore Myers. Welcome to the story and this interview all about you and the work that you do and why you do it.
Oh, thank you. I'm so glad to be here with you.
Yeah.
As always.
So I'm delighted that you're joining me today. And I want to talk about a few things that I think are really going to help people who are listening, who are contemplating divorce, who are still in the midst of divorce, and possibly those who are coming out of divorce. Tell us what you do and why you do what you do.
I am a family law mediator and attorney, and I help people transition through this painful life experience in the most peaceful, beneficial way for all the people involved in the family, spouses, children. And I do it because I have seen in my 35 years of practice how painful this process is for people. And I started practicing family law in 1988. And I think I had only been practicing in it maybe 3 or 4 years, and just saw how brutal the court system was for people to go through. And I remember somebody at a Pennsylvania Bar Association family law meeting standing up and saying, I am a reformed custody litigator. And I thought, I want to be that when I grow up. And that started me going and looking for a better way to be part of the solution instead of part of the problem as people go through this. And so I became a certified mediator back in 1993 when nobody was doing mediation. I had to travel to Maryland and spend a week down there to get my certification. And I tried to engage people in mediation back then, but there wasn't a lot of information out there and people really weren't interested in it. And the way I was initially trained, I felt was not protective enough and inclusive enough. So I just kind of did my own thing throughout the years. And then I had the opportunity to become a custody conciliator in Montgomery County. And that was my dream job because that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to try and help people resolve these custody cases in a peaceful manner. And so that I started to expand. And then I met Chris and Sharon from Mainline Family Law Center. And they finally were people that understood mediation in the way I did. And so that really launched me into doing mediation more full time than I had been.
All right.
And I look at myself as a peacemaker.
And that energy absolutely comes out of you every time that I am with you and in your presence. Let me just get some clarity on a few terms, okay?
Sure.
Introduce yourself as an attorney mediator. Why do you say attorney mediator instead of just saying mediator or just saying attorney?
Because a lot of mediators are not attorneys and a lot of attorneys aren't mediators, and that the reason I'd say it that way is because I have, as a mediator, the unique understanding of what the law is, and I can help prepare in my mediation process legal documents for parties, not as their representative, but as a neutral third party attorney. Why do I say a mediator in addition with attorneys? Because most times attorneys are considered to be litigators. They like to go in court and fight. That's not what I do. I try and help parties come to a compromise. And I am not in my role as a mediator, I'm not representing either party legally. I am just a facilitator to the conversation for the two of them to help them come up with a solution that works best for their family, not necessarily something that's dictated to them by the court, or it's something that they can actively create to work for their family. Because in the court, they're always trying to put square pegs into round holes. And that just generally doesn't suit a family. And again, this is painful enough as it is. So it doesn't make sense to put people in a more pressure-filled meat grinder kind of situation that just exacerbates what's already going on between them, that painful separation.
Okay, so let me back up for a second, because I can hear questions rolling around in my mind from my invisible audience saying, wait a minute, but if I'm going to get a divorce, I'm going to fight. That is the point of divorce. It is to fight for what you believe is yours, to fight for how you've been hurt, to fight for your children. Why would I ever want a mediator when my job here, my role here is fight?
It doesn't have to be a fight, and it shouldn't be a fight, because especially when there's children involved, you're always going to be a family. You're always going to have to cooperate. Your children need you and your spouse to be a foundation under them. And if you go into court to fight to win, you're basically taking a jackhammer to your children's foundation. And even if there aren't children involved, you and your spouse have built something together. And you know that it means something to the two of you. You can't say that you didn't go into a marriage without loving that other person, without wanting to create something with that other person. And despite all of its flaws, do you really want to take a jackhammer to it? Do you really want to just destroy what you two have built together? Or do you want to look at it as, I want to share with my spouse what we've built together? I mean, if you're in a desert and there's a pitcher of water and there's two people, do you want to pour the water and believe that there's enough for each of you? Or do you want to take all the water and watch the other person, be dying of thirst? I think people actually are not that cruel. They actually love that person, and they really don't want to keep fighting. They just want peace. They want to go their separate ways, and they want peace.
So then what you're saying is interesting, because honestly, there are people who want that bucket of water to just be theirs, and they want to drink it in front of their thirsty ex, or ex soon to be ex, while he or she suffers in the dry heat. That is the reality. But I hear something different that you're saying. You said, well, people aren't really that cruel. So does that mean that mediation has the potential to bring out the best in people?
Most definitely. That's where people can find their better angels. And you're right. There are some people that just want to hurt the other person.
Yes.
They do. And so there are litigators for them, and they can go into the court. But I don't think in the end, after it's all said and done, that people that do that actually are satisfied. I think, that doesn't heal the wound. And they feel actually a lot of times wounded more because they feel now that because they didn't get satisfaction that they were looking for emotionally, they feel wounded by their attorney because their attorneys cost them so much money. They feel wounded by the courts because the courts didn't see their side. And they feel, re-wounded by their spouse because their spouse got another one over on them. So it's, again, some people just want to fight.
Mhm.
And okay, the courts are there for them.
So
But I think the majority of people are looking for an alternative, and they don't know anything other to do than, get an attorney. And they have their family that's very protective of them and saying, you got to get a lawyer and take them for everything that they have because they've hurt you. Well, that's not just because, people hurting doesn't actually help anybody heal.
Mhm.
And I think people genuinely want to heal.
Yeah.
They just don't know how.
Yes, I hear you. Describe for us the emotional, financial, spiritual, and relational costs to fighting, and then we'll go into talking about peace. But let's just deal a little bit more with the cost of fight.
It's enormous. I mean, first, monetarily. Attorneys are expensive. And there's a lot of hurry up and wait in the court system. So you're paying your attorney several $100s an hour, sometimes just to sit for hours waiting to talk to the judge for 15 minutes, half hour to make the argument. It's much more expensive to finance two households than one. So you as spouses are taking your limited resources and you're spending a lot of money, basically handing over the keys to your kingdom to a stranger in a black robe. And the family law is not a definite science. It's not predictable. There's general parameters that the courts have to follow, and but each county, each judge, they interpret it all a little different, and you don't know what you're going to get that day. So you're really handing over control. Mm-hmm. So emotionally and mentally, you're already feeling like your world's imploding. Everything's falling apart. You're losing control, and you're further handing over control to complete strangers. Mm-hmm. So emotionally, it's so taxing, and you really don't understand what's going on because there's lawyers and judges speaking this language that you don't understand. It sometimes feels like it defies logic. Like, why would a judge decide that? Also, it's because you feel you're right and they're wrong, but a third party doesn't necessarily see things the way you do.
And isn't it
and so it's really taxing on a person. It's really it's a real traumatic experience, 360 degrees.
And the third party doesn't really care that much. I'm talking about like in the court's sense. The judge doesn't really care that much about your outcome as you care about your outcome. The judge may not have that kind of compassion for your side as you would hope he or she would have.
Yes and no. I mean, I think that the judges really take it seriously that they want to do right by the family, but they never have the whole picture in the way you see it. Okay. And you think your situation is unique, and they've heard it 1,000 times. So they've already kind of made a decision based on your set of facts just at the outset, just the basic facts. And so it's and also, you've asked them to solve your problem. So, either you give them control or you go figure it out yourselves. And that's kind of the attitude that they take. Listen, you've come here with your issue and you want me to resolve it. So let me resolve it. So it seems like they're cold, but honestly, they're not as much as you would think. And obviously every judge comes to the bench every day with a certain outlook based on past experiences, based on what their morning was, based on their past experience, even with your attorney. You don't know. So again, it's really just, it's the system that you're stepping into. And it is kind of cold, but the judges are not as cold as you would think, unless they rule in on your favor, and then you think they're wonderful.
You said you gave a word that I think is really important here. I think you said this word. It's unpredictable.
There's
so many variables involved in what you just described in terms of the court system. You've got the judge, you've got your attorney, you've got your spouse's attorney, and you've got the relationship with the attorneys to the judge's issues that morning. There's just so many different parts to this that you can't, like you said, it's not a science. You can't say for certain this will be the outcome. This is why mediation makes sense then. It makes sense because you reduce the variables involved in your situation and you get to take the front seat.
Exactly. It's predictable because the two of you make your decisions. You decide together what's going to work best for your family. And the two of you are not necessarily going to see things the same way, but a mediator is skilled enough to be able to help the two of you work through your issues to come back to center, which is what's going to work best for everybody. There's something called the game theory. It's the Nash equilibrium is the scientific theory. And it's based on the scientist from A Beautiful Mind created it. And there actually are there's a family attorney and a psychologist that have written a book about game theory. And in short, what it is if you choose the alternative that benefits everybody, then you get the most benefit. If you choose something that only benefits you, or will only benefit the other person or a third person, you lose out on the overall best result for everybody. And that genuinely gives the most, gets the most out of the situation. So that's what mediation is really about. Everybody looking at what's going to benefit the whole, because that overall is ultimately the best result to shoot for. My website, Divorce Done Differently PA, I have articles referencing that.
I want to dig a little bit more into you for a second. You said that there was a reformed custody litigator that you met and you said, I want to do what you're doing. Did I get that right?
Yes. Well, she just stood up in the audience and said, I'm a reformed custody litigator. And a bell went off in my head. And I said, that's who I want to be when I grow up. I don't want to litigate.
What's so bad about litigating? Like, is there a particular story that you can tell us where you came to the realization, in addition to the woman standing up, but you came to a realization that litigating is not what I want to do anymore?
I think I came to it early on in custody cases, because, and that's especially when she said that about the custody litigator in court, in custody litigation. It's each parent taking an arm and pulling. It rips the children apart. I remember being in chambers with judges questioning these little kids about, what's it like to be with mommy? What's it like to be with daddy? How stressful is that? It's traumatizing enough for a child's universe to have been imploded when his or her parents separate households. It's traumatizing enough that they have to go back between two houses. And then to feel that to love either one of those parents, you're betraying the other parent, because that's really the feeling that they get when they're in court.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so brutal. It's so brutal. And here, the parents they don't trust one another as it is right at that moment. And then to be in a situation that just breeds distrust, which is, the courts, because you're attacking one another. It's just heartbreaking. And that's why I always wanted to be the custody conciliator, because I just wanted parents to understand there's another way to do this and how important it is, because children are building blocks of our society. And if you're showing children that the way to interact with another person is to fight and to knock them down and to badmouth them, that other person who is half of your DNA, what does that do for the child? First of all, it makes them feel bad about themselves. It makes them feel insecure, because the relationships that they're relying on for basically their survival, they can't really trust it's going to be there, because it's already been imploded. And then, what framework do they have going forward to create relationships with anybody else in their world? They have this set of dysfunctional relationship tools that plays out in every scenario in their life going forward. So and this has been a gradual realization for me over the impact that this has, not just on families, but on society in general.
Yeah.
And so I just knew there was a better way. And I think I went into law to help people. Mm-hmm. And I didn't feel that what I was doing in family law was helping people in the way that I best could.
So the mistake that parents make is the idea that their children will go through this and that they'll just be fine. Oh, sure, their children are resilient, so this is really not going to affect them the way that I'm being affected or the father is being affected. This is not true.
Not at all. I have to say, as a conciliator, I'm telling them that all the time. I love when a parent will say to me in conciliation, "This isn't fair." And my steam comes out of my ears. I'm like, this isn't fair. Nothing about this is fair, mostly for your child, mm-hmm. because your child does all the work here. You two are sitting fat and happy in your house, and your kid is the one schlepping back and forth. And even on their best day, they couldn't do that. But their kid does it because they love them and they need them and they want to be with them. And the parents have to understand that it's their job to make it easier on the child. Mm-hmm. So, and getting back to relationships, what I then chide them, I say, you didn't do your work. Look back on your family history. This shouldn't surprise you why you picked one another and why you're here. And had you done some more personal work, maybe the child's universe wouldn't have imploded. But at least going forward, you're still obligated to show the child what a healthy relationship looks like, because all of their friends, their family, their coworkers, their teachers, their employers, their relationships with, classmates, employees, romantic interests, and their relationship with their parents is going to be based on what they see their parents doing with one another, because you can't do what you don't know. And then my other thing is, I say, family history, there's always toxicity, and it's like an avalanche. It builds up. And if you don't get out of the way, somebody gets buried.
Mm-hmm.
It might be your kid, might be your great grandchild or your grandchild. But at some point, somebody will be buried by that toxicity. And so you need to figure out a way to change things. And you only have to turn the stream a little to change the course of a river.
Mm.
But most people are dealing with toothpicks and teaspoons to do that. And they need pickaxes and shovels to do that deep work. And that really comes from individual and family counseling. And that's where people should really be putting their money instead of litigating.
Mm. You have a lot of passion. I mean, it's palpable. I can feel in my body, actually, in my intuitive self, the passion. Where else is this passion coming from?
I got into law to help people, to heal people. And so I feel that what I do is trying to heal people. I feel that I'm trying to plant seeds that later will bloom and grow into big, strong trees and change, just change the course of certain family histories in a way that is going to make all the difference in the world.
So you've always been a healer then. Your nature is healing then. This is where I'm digging into.
I am a I am a nurturer healer. As a kid, everything was my pet. Anything that crossed my path, I took in. Worms, insects, frogs, turtles, rabbits, anything. My poor mother had such a menagerie, it wasn't even funny. But yeah, that's who I am.
Yeah.
I have to have something to nurture.